What's up, guys? It's Mike Lepowski from the International Association of Resistance Trainers and MikeLepowski.com. As always, bringing you the real deal of resistance exercise. So, I just finished my workout, sucked down my protein shake, so I'm feeling extra energized at the moment, and I'm excited to talk to you about creating personal training programs that will hopefully help you attract more clients and create loyal followers. Now, most of you who are here already have and have hopefully read the Advanced Exercise Application Manual. So a lot of the concepts of what I'll be covering today will be quite familiar to you. Now, if you don't have the book, you can get it for free if you just go to MikeLepowski.com, and in the upper right hand side of the page you'll see a link where you can order the book. The only thing that you have to pay for is the shipping. So now what I'd like to do is, if I can, share with you and outline the system that I've used for the past 10 years to create an endless stream of clients and cultivate loyal followers, and basically average about 50 training sessions per week. And I do that by choice. You know, I love spending my time with individuals like yourselves, other fitness professionals who, understand this stuff on a deeper level. So I like to spread my time between working one-on-one with clients and, working with other professionals who I can really have deeper conversations with, because that's really, that's what gets me juice. And then on top of that, I have my new son now, so, this whole new fatherhood thing is a brand new experience to me, and, I'm glad that I'm not having to spend too much time working one-on-one with people, because I know that it's going to take away from my time with him, and of course my wife, who can certainly use the help right now. But allow me to start by giving you a little bit of insight about what your clients are actually looking for. And here's a clue. It's not a workout. But when I tell you what it is, I'm sure I'm going to probably lose some of you, but that's okay, because the fact of the matter is that I'd rather keep those of you here who see the bigger picture and don't mind doing some of the dirty work. And what I mean by dirty work is, working hard to create a structure. Not just piecing together workouts that, you find fun and enjoyable. Just about anybody can do that. And don't get me wrong, having fun, enjoying this whole process, it's part of it. But what's more important and what's going to really help you lock down these individuals as clients is having a structure, having a system in place. So that's what a lot of our discussion today is going to revolve around. We're going to talk about the framework that you need to put in place to attract clients and keep clients and make them loyal followers. And what I'm going to share is what I've used in my business for 10 years. But you can adapt it to what works for you or your market. The goal, though, is whatever this system becomes, the goal is to be able to explain that system to someone and watch the light bulb go off in their head when they realize how much sense it makes. And then, of course, you're going to sign them up as a new client. Now, before I go any further, I want to make it perfectly clear that I can't guarantee how many clients you'll land or keep as a result of what I'm going to show you. I know people like to throw around big guarantees, but I'm not going to make one of them. And it's not because this doesn't work or I'm unsure, because myself, my staff, and plenty other IART students have proven time and time again that this type of system does work. But because I can't account for the other influencing factors, things like your personality and likability, although I'm sure you're all pretty cool since you're on this webinar, I can't account for your experience or how long it's going to take you to absorb and apply this stuff, or if you're just going to cherry pick the parts of this that you like and not follow through with it as outlined. And we see that happen plenty of times when, people dismiss parts of something that they learn, and, that's a critical piece to making it work. It's the driving force behind it. So if you choose to cherry pick, hey, if it fits into what you're doing, I'm okay with it, as long as you're getting the result that you want to get. Because I, by no way at all, feel like, I have this completely locked up and, understand it fully. There's aspects to this that I'm still learning, and I just want to share with you what's worked for me up to this point. And as I'm learning more, I just hope to share those experiences with you. And I also hope to share with you some of the failures in some of these processes, because some of those will definitely provide you with some good insights as to what not to do or what to avoid. So really, I mean, I'm saying all this basically because I just want to give you the respect that you deserve and not try to manipulate you into thinking that I have all the answers or convince you that this is the, be all end all of personal training programs. So here's the reason why I'm doing this stuff. The reason why we're here on this webinar. And it's because I believe that personal trainers carry out one of the single most important jobs in society today. And I truly, truly believe this on the deepest level. We are the first line of defense, and in a healthcare system that's completely broken right now, people more than ever need preventative medicine, and nobody is more suited to provide that to them than us. Because of our understanding of exercise and the impact it can have on all areas of life. It's not just about looking good and feeling good, but all the other health markers, we know that what we do is going to have a direct impact on those things. So I really believe that what we're doing is important. And another reason why I'm doing this is because I just want you to be more effective at it and get the respect that you deserve. I really feel that if we are the first line of defense and we're the ones who are really out there providing a great amount of value to people, then we deserve a certain amount of respect. And oftentimes we don't get it. People don't view personal trainers always as being anything more than a luxury item. And you and I know that's not true. We know that we're so much more than that. But if we have systems and processes in place, then people don't see us as just somebody who gives a workout. They see us as somebody who, much like a doctor, is prescribing something that's going to help us get better or help them get better. And if you already have the respect that you believe you deserve, then that's great. I want to make sure then that you have the income you deserve. Because if you're having a bigger impact on people, then you deserve to have a bigger bank account. And, listen, money's not everything. I'm not walking around a multi-millionaire, but at least I know that I'm doing what I need to do to support myself, support my family, so that I can be out there making a difference in people's lives. And if I can't support myself or my family, then I know I can't do good by anybody else. And I can't dedicate the time that I want to dedicate to my craft. And I know that it's probably the same for you. And we also, listen, we have desires and we have wants and needs, and we need to fulfill those. Those are important to our own health and our own development. So I really, I like discussing some of what we discussed today with people, because if it helps you to bring in extra income, I know that that's going to have an impact on other people outside of just you and your family. I know that you're going to be able to help more people because now you're not tied up into having to focus your attention on things that are related to financial stress. Now, as we move ahead, I'm going to ask you to do a few things, because otherwise none of what we discuss will be of any real benefit. So here's our to-do list. First, listen actively. The question that you always want to be asking yourself is, how can I use this? You might not have the same business structure that I have, but there's always something that you could take away from it and apply to your own that could help you take your business, take your services to the next level. And we have to challenge our current methods, because sometimes what we're doing, it's great. It's gotten us to where we are, but we should always be questioning, could I be doing this better? Could I get better? Staying the same really is as good as regressing, or it's more like dying, because as the world keeps moving forward, if you're staying the same, you're getting way behind. And we know that in this industry where new information is constantly coming out, we have to stay ahead of the curve, not just for the benefit of the people that we are serving, but also for, again, our own business benefit. So challenge what you currently think, challenge what you currently do. Maybe you can find a better way, or maybe you can just fine-tune what you're doing. Either way, stay focused on moving ahead. Now, also take notes. I don't want this to be just one of these webinars where you sit in and listen to me talk for, whatever, 30, 40 minutes and then turn it off and, tune everything I said out. Take notes, because as we're moving through this, like I said, you might just find one golden nugget, one thing that you can apply right away, and it'll make a big difference. So keep notes. And lastly, apply the formula. So I'm going to lay out some specifics for you, but you gotta really consider, putting this stuff into action. Just take it for a test drive. There's no sense in having a Ferrari if you always keep it parked in the garage. And you may think that some of what I discuss is really not necessarily the Ferrari of personal training programs, but I gotta say, it's been such for me thus far. So the aim of the program that we're going to outline really revolves around muscle hypertrophy and increases in muscular strength. Now, the reason why we're focusing on these two things is because that's what 85% of the people who seek your help are looking to achieve. Even if they say they're not looking for these things specifically, whatever they are looking for is likely the result of these two things. Since most of you on this webinar work with the general population, that's who our discussion is going to be centered around. But even if you work with athletes, many of the same principles apply with some changes in application. And if you work with strength athletes such as powerlifters or Olympic lifters exclusively, then some of this will not apply to you, but who knows, you still might hear a thing or two that makes you rethink and improve your approach. But if you jump off the webinar, I'm not going to be offended, since I'm really looking out for the personal trainers who work with a much more broad and common clientele, and they're looking to maximize their training and profits at the same time. So what does a program that delivers results and dollars look like? Well, I'm going to tell you in a moment what it looks like, but first let me tell you what it doesn't look like. It doesn't look like 1-hour training sessions performed 5 times per week. It doesn't look like a trainer standing next to his or her client while they walk, jog, pedal, or elliptical the minutes away. It doesn't look like random workouts strung together or the mirror image of the workout that you did that morning. It certainly doesn't look like you doing your workouts with your client, because that's totally unprofessional, unless of course you're teaching a class. But what it does look like is it looks time efficient to the client and to you. It does look like a sensible approach that has some long-term value. It has a structure and processes that can be duplicated. The processes can be easily explained, and the potential client can actually see themselves doing the program and being successful. And it allows you the opportunity to work with more people. So, in essence, it should look very different than what everyone else is doing. So next, I want to get into the nuts and bolts of creating this program. Now, remember, our focus is on muscle hypertrophy and increasing functional strength, and both of which will result in increased metabolism, more energy, vitality, flexibility, stronger bones, becoming an Adonis or Venus, and all that other good stuff everyone is coming to you saying they want. With this firmly in mind, we focus our attention on one of the 7 primary principles of exercise science. Now, I know you've read through the manual, you've seen what those 7 principles of exercise science are. But the one that we're really concentrating on here is the SAID principle, or specific adaptations to imposed demands. Most of you have heard this before, but just to clarify it, it means that the way you train should be in alignment with your goals, and that every specific outcome you're looking to achieve through exercise has a very specific set of training demands that must be met in order to achieve that outcome. The question then is, if muscle hypertrophy and functional strength are the goals, what are the necessary demands to achieve them? We already know it's going to involve resistance training, but how much? This is an important question because, remember, we're trying to develop a program that delivers outstanding results not just decent results, outstanding results for the client, and puts dollars in your pocket. Under no circumstances are we going to compromise our training or water it down. But we also have to make ourselves available to the most number of people possible in order to keep our pipeline full. So this is the trouble that a lot of us as personal trainers run into. When we first get started, think about those first couple clients you had. I mean, think about how well you treated them and, how much attention you gave them. And that was easy to do when you only had 2 or 3 people. But as you started getting more and more clients, obviously your attention starts to get pulled away and maybe the quality tends to drop off. I mean, it does happen to all of us at some time or another. So we have to make the conscious effort to keep, the quality of our training high. But one of the ways that we do that is by having a system. And of course, application is everything. And if you can apply resistance training effectively, you should never really need more than 30 minutes to deliver a result-stimulating workout. Maybe 45 minutes if you're working in a large gym setting that requires you to work around other people, or if you're working with somebody who has very, very special needs. But if you're in a small gym or studio or doing in-home workouts, then 30 minutes should be the benchmark you set for your training sessions. The truth is, when you cut the fluff out of an hour-long workout, the fluff being the 1 to 2 warm-up sets for every exercise, or the ancillary exercises that theoretically seem good but whose effect is largely unnoticeable, or performing redundant exercises for a muscle group, I mean, you're typically left with 15 to 25 minutes of real result-producing work. If you've heard of the Pareto principle, also known as the 80-20 rule, then you know that 80% of your results come from 20% of the work. So why not put 80 to 90% of your efforts towards that 20%? Now, I'm not gonna spend time quoting studies, but research has clearly demonstrated that if you're training with a high intensity of effort, you can achieve significant muscle and strength gains and as well as improve your cardiovascular conditioning with 2 to 3 of these 30-minute training sessions per week. I know there's some people who promote as little as 1 session per week, but personal experience and much of the empirical evidence points to this being less effective and at times counterproductive. The physical benefits that are easily achieved with 60 to 90 minutes of targeted high intensity resistance exercise it's what the general population is after. And to be honest, I know plenty of natural bodybuilders like myself, as well as athletes and strength and conditioning coaches whose programs don't take much more than this. So you don't have to dedicate hours per week to make significant gains. You just have to be more directed and targeted in your approach. I mean, for me personally, even during competition prep or periods of increased demands, I rarely exceed more than 2 hours of training per week. And that's because nutrition, as we all know, plays a much bigger role than exercise when the focus is on fat loss, which also I have a great program for that works extremely well, is healthy and clinically tested, and doesn't require any extra time on your part to implement with clients, and can be an awesome boost to your business. But that's not something I'm here to discuss. That's something that if you're interested in knowing more, just contact me and I'd love to talk to you about it offline. But for now, I want to tell you how 60 to 90 minutes breaks down financially, since we're focused on results and dollars by attracting clients and retaining them long term. Now, most gyms and personal trainers sell their session by the hour. Now, I'm gonna use a hypothetical example here just to highlight some points. The 1 hour session might sell for $90. Now, if you're in New York City, this is a bargain, and you may very well attract clients who pay, for 3 to 5 sessions a week at this rate. Now, even though the majority of the people who purchase personal training do have discretionary income, Few are willing to part with $270 to $450 a week for personal training. A month, sure. A week, yeah, not likely. Not long term, at least. Now, if someone were paying $90 per session for one session, and you offered them 2 sessions for just $10 more, do you think they would take it? Of course they would, and so would you. Even if, there's a lot more benefit, even from a client's perspective, to seeing their trainer twice per week versus once, even if the amount of time they're seeing them for is still the same. Why? Because they're smart enough to know that frequency and consistency is more important than an occasional chunk of time, especially when that chunk of time is no more effective or produces any greater results than half of it. But unfortunately, they don't necessarily know that. So for you, by doing 2 30-minute sessions instead of 1 hour session, you just increased your hourly rate by $10. But it does get better. If a client wanted to do 3 sessions per week at the $90 rate, okay, they would have to shell out $270. Now, because you can get them as good a results with 3 30-minute sessions versus the 3-hour sessions, it'll cost them a more reasonable $150. So really, it's a win-win. You and the client both get the stability of working together on a consistent basis, which means they get better results with less time and monetary investment, and you command a higher hourly rate and increase your chance of establishing a long-term working relationship with this person. Now, if you can nail down more clients, right, because now you have the time to, more clients means greater security. By doing hourly sessions, you can only handle so many sessions in a week. We all know this. Half-hour sessions give you the opportunity to double the total number of sessions you do in a week. If you're doing hourly sessions, what happens when a client goes away for a week? The income lost is much greater than if a half-hour client goes away. So you're not going to see $90 in an hour disappear when somebody goes away. You're only going to see $50 disappear. And that's significant. I mean, it might not sound like a big deal. I mean, we see numbers, right? And we see the higher price tag on our, per session, and we should be charging a lot for what we do. But the point is that you also have to play this defensively. And, the income loss can be much more damaging to you sometimes than what you're bringing in. Now, when I talk about competitive pricing, I want to be very clear that I'm not talking about cheapening your services. Again, I believe that if you are truly adding value to people's lives through your work, then you should charge as much as the market will pay. That said, 30-minute sessions give the appearance of being more fairly priced, but as we've showed, you'll actually make more for every hour you're training a client. If a client believes they're getting a fair price, which they should, you should never be out to rip off anyone. Then they are 10 times more likely to stay around long term. The 30-minute model is also more scalable for those of you that own or plan to own a personal training studio. So, I know that for us in our studio, it's a big deal that we can get more people in over the course of a week, because also it exposes us to a far greater number of people than we could be exposed to if we were doing half the number of sessions per hour that we're doing. So what this all really adds up to in the big picture is having a bigger impact, because you can work with more people. And by having the opportunity though to work with them long term, because in their eyes they're getting a better price, more competitive price, and you're providing a phenomenal service, and you're actually saving them time, which for the majority of the general population, their biggest issue and the number one reason why they say they don't start an exercise program in the first place is because they don't have the time. but you're not asking them to put in hours per week. You're asking them to put in 1 hour, an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours over the course of an entire week. So this helps, this is going to help big time in terms of getting them the results they want and creating lasting change. Okay, so obviously you see why I like the 30-minute model so much, more so than the 60-minute one. I mean, it makes much more sense financially, but it's more attractive to people of all fitness levels once they understand how it looks. I mean, you're going to have people hear you say 30 minutes, and suddenly they're going to be looking at you with skepticism written all over their face. In fact, I wouldn't doubt that some of you have that same level of skepticism right now. But let me assure you, as a professional natural bodybuilder, someone that's conducted over 20,000 training sessions and has a network of trainers, professional and collegiate strength and conditioning coaches that apply this model, it works if it's applied properly. So let's take a look at what it looks like. I'm going to show you the exact protocol that we use at my personal training studio, and this comes right from our operations manual. Again, I'm going to encourage you to take notes, but you should have gotten an email where you could have downloaded these pages, these handouts. Now, can you tweak this to your liking? Yes, but this has worked exceptionally well as is for years, so if you're going to give it a shot, I say give it a fair shot. Some of you are going to look at this and you're going to dismiss parts of it after applying it and claim that it doesn't work. And it won't work if you're not willing to truly put it into practice. Okay, enough talk. Time to establish the ground rules. This program is designed to move people, the trainee, from a general routine to a fully individualized program. Here's a general outline of the program, and again, this comes straight from our operations manual, so hopefully you have these pages in front of you right now, because obviously it's not that easy to read here on the screen. I know they were sent to your email, so like I said, hopefully you're getting them now or you're downloading them right now. I'm also going to cover some points since, again, you could read this over in full detail on your own, but I just want to give you the gist of what me and my team of trainers are trying to accomplish with this program. So the first thing that we do is when somebody comes in, I know a lot of trainers are not into giving away free sessions and things like that. For us personally, it's what we've done. We do the trial workout. We, do it as a way to sit down with people, get an idea of what their needs are, because, one of the things that's important is that even though you have a system in place, it shouldn't necessarily be cookie cutter. It's never one size fits all. So we want to take the time to really understand this individual who's coming in asking for our help, and so that this way, what it does for us is that as we move forward and we're teaching them some of the principles behind what we do and explaining to them why we do it, we can relate it back to their specific needs, their goals, and that's an important part to all of this. So aside from our complimentary trial workout where we'll run them through some exercises, help them get a feel for things, and collect our information on this person, again, our goal with that is to add more value up front. If any of you have ever read the book Influence, you've heard about the law of reciprocity, that if you give somebody something and with no strings attached, oftentimes they'll feel obligated to do something in return. So for us, we want to deliver as much value as we possibly can up front, because we believe in what we do and we know how much it's going to help this person. And if they can see that, if they can see in our hearts that we care about them, then they're going to reciprocate by giving us their business. So, as I said, not everyone is big on the free trial workout or anything like that. I'm not encouraging you to do it, but we do it and it's worked exceptionally well for us. So what I want to outline here is that we look at our training program and we break it up into different phases. So the first thing is that through the initial 2 to 6 sessions, most of that time is spent teaching this individual the system. We want to teach them the skills involved, how we expect them to perform the exercises, help them to learn what our expectations are of them. And so during this time, the workouts look relatively the same from one week to the next. We don't want to throw too many things at them or make too many changes. The goal is to get them to adapt to what they're doing. And it's not useful if you are constantly stringing together different types of workouts and throwing too much at them. We do want their muscles to adapt to these specific exercises, so really think of this as the core of what you're going to be doing going forward. Now, the client, they need to be able to execute the exercises safely and with proper form before any variations to the workout routine or to the exercises themselves are made. We start usually with the easiest to execute version of an exercise before getting to a more complicated one. And this is also by design, not just to make it easier for them to perform these movements, but also we know that an important factor to getting them results quickly and helping them feel good about what they're doing is to get them to work up to their highest intensity level possible. Get them to train with greater effort. And most people will feel more comfortable doing that when the exercise has, less complicated aspects to it. There's, fewer nuances. Now, after they're able to perform the exercises properly, then the emphasis of each workout goes towards training with the highest intensity level possible. Now, this might start as early as the second or third session for some people, depending upon their physical and, of course, their psychological abilities, their mental toughness. Some people, it's going to take them a little bit while to get used to working hard because they've never trained hard on their own. And for somebody who's new to exercise, well, this is just a whole new concept altogether. But really, the reason why we're so focused on putting our emphasis on intensity above all else right now is because we're taking more of a quality over quantity approach. And also our personal philosophy, which we express to them, and most people really, they love this, is we want them to perform the least amount of exercise necessary to get the best possible result. And anybody who's delved deep into that advanced exercise application manual knows that we do this because we're trying to manage stress. We're trying to manage exercise stress along with the other stressors in their life. So we know that even though exercise will have a positive impact on them physically, mentally, emotionally, and can be a source of stress relief, we also know that physical exercise is a negative stress on the body. And when you're dealing with, maybe an older population, especially one that's unaccustomed to exercise, it's very important to be able to manage their training demands, which really, that's the next part of this, is that after a sufficient level of intensity has been established, along with, the right amount of volume and frequency. I want to make this very clear right now that this is not one of these traditional high-intensity training programs where it's one set to failure only, and you got to move in circuit style and all that. No, it's not that. We are looking to individualize workouts, but we're just looking to be more time efficient. That is it. If somebody needs to do 2, 3, 4 sets for a particular exercise to get the most out of it, we'll do that. We just also know that the amount of total demands that we want to place on them over the course of a week, especially if we want to maintain a long-term working relationship with them, that has to be managed. And so that's the third phase of this, is focusing on how we manage their training demands for long-term success. So here's a little breakdown of what this looks like in terms of weeks. We consider the first 4 weeks an introduction to our program. And when we sell training packages, what we do is we sell them in 4-week time frames, meaning they'll get either an 8-session package or a 12-session package, and those workouts have to be used up over the course of 4 weeks. So this way they're either doing 2 or 3 workouts per week on average. Okay. Now, we consider this these first 4 weeks, our introductory period. Now, the important thing to realize is that we make the blatant assumption that this person is going to be with us for more than one package. Okay, even people who come in with the intention of doing only one training package soon realize that there is so much to learn and understand to have long-term success that an additional 1 to 2 months is almost guaranteed. And of course, we have some people who just never leave. And that's one of the biggest differences between giving people a workout and having a system built around education and progression. Again, I'll repeat that. A system built around education and progression. While you can't guarantee the rate that one person is going to progress compared to another, you can paint them a picture of what progression looks like and the typical time frame if they do exactly what you prescribe. So now just a few quick points about this 4-week training program. Okay? It's intended to help them become more accustomed to training with that high intensity of effort and discovering their individual nuances, so that this way we know, should this person be doing a little bit more volume, maybe they should be training more frequently. But since most will be locked into training either 2 or 3 times per week, what we do is we start them off with a full body routine. So, for 2 times per week, we stay with that routine because we just find that the frequency of hitting the muscle groups more than once per week is far more effective. And even if they're training 3 times per week, we will also stick with the full body, but for some people, we may quickly move to an upper-lower body split. And this way, again, on average, each muscle group is being trained at least once every 4 days, which for the majority of people is going to be a good enough frequency. And as we had mentioned before, through the first couple of weeks, the focus is on their form, skill, and then intensity of effort. And then we do tend to place more emphasis on doing the 1 set to momentary muscular failure for each exercise through these first 4 weeks. Again, the reason behind this is strategic. It's not just about high intensity exercise. You and I both know that the harder anybody works, whether they're doing 1 set, 2 sets, 4 sets, 10 sets, the harder they train, the more demands that they put on themselves. As long as that's balanced with proper recovery, the better the result that they're going to get. But what happens with most people is when you set the expectation up front that they're going to only do, they're going to do 3 sets of this or 4 sets of that, what everybody winds up doing is holding themselves back. And yes, it's your job to keep them motivated and to push them, but it's just human nature. If any of you have been athletes in the past, I know I had this experience personally, so a lot of you will probably be able to relate. So if you were on any type of sports team in high school, elementary school, college, at the end of practice, what does every coach do? He or she lines you up on an end line, right, and tells you you're going to run 10 wind sprints. And what does every single person on the team do? They wait until the 10th sprint to finally run their hardest. And why do they do this? They do it because they knew they got to complete 10 wind sprints. So I'm not going to put forth my max effort up front. I'm going to hold back until I know I'm going to put forth my max effort and be finished. So in going into each of these exercises, we recommend people start with 1 set to momentary muscular failure, because if you tell them they only have to do it once, the chances of them giving you a greater effort is a lot higher. And so obviously some people are not going to be capable of pushing themselves to failure with a single set. Or you may have to restrict how hard they train because of an injury or an ailment. But in those instances, yes, all your sets should be taken short of failure. And yes, it might be best to, implement a second set or possibly a third. But the point is that it's best to probably take the approach of doing the least necessary in the beginning. And then there's some other factors on here that, we don't necessarily need to cover. You can go through them later on. But a lot of this is just some little specifics that we found that works well with our clientele. And one of the things I will highlight is that, All the exercises, they should be performed full range of motion. We won't do any set or rep variations here. There's no forced reps, or we don't do any zone training with them, or rest pause negatives, anything like that. The focus is really on just progressing them through increases in weight or time under tension or reps. That's our focus. We tend to place the emphasis there and make sure that each week they're beating their previous week's weight loads and time under tension. In the rare instance that somebody has really good ability, then we may, start to move into the advanced techniques a little bit sooner. But even for those who are advanced, usually a lot of the things that we're implementing are so new that, for them, this is just a big change from what they're accustomed to. So even in those instances, we don't need to make any major jumps. Okay, so after the introductory period, we start our process of individualizing their routine. And this is really where, our IART fitness clinician course comes into play. Okay, I don't want to handcuff my trainers and lock them into carrying out a predefined routine. Although, as you can see, I'm a very strong believer in systems. I don't want to be the McDonald's of personal training. I prefer to be more like Ruth's Chris. See, they're both franchises, right? And we all know how franchises operate. They all operate off of systems. But as a franchise, Ruth's Chris has systems and processes just like McDonald's does, but their business, like mine, is all about individualized, high-quality service. That is what the client is paying for, so that's what we want to give them. But we want to give that to them systematically. Even as we tailor our routines to the individual, we still have guidelines we follow to maintain congruency. But I rely on my trainer's education to make proper decisions based on what they've learned about this individual's abilities, limitations, and psychology. So during these next 5 to 8 weeks, depending upon whether they're training twice per week or 3 times per week, we may keep them on the full body routine, or we may move to an upper lower body split. The upper lower body split still, for most people, is too little frequency, since they're training the muscles once every 7 days. So, oftentimes we'll still stick with some type of full body routine, but maybe place greater emphasis on upper or lower body, or do a front of the body and back of the body type of split. And if they're training 3 times per week, depending upon their physical type, they should either perform the upper lower body split, just to, again, allow for enough recovery time between muscle groups. But again, that's not set in stone. We will have some people who still do full body workouts. But again, this is all about managing training demands. And then we will also put some people on a 3-way split. But once again, the 3-way split is not always conducive to getting the best results, since they're only touching on each muscle group once every 7 days. I mean, this tends to be best reserved for people who are very fast to fatigue and have a high amount of fast twitch muscle fibers, and train with a very high intensity of training, or they're really slow to recover. That too. So during weeks 9 to 12, so I just want to point out that although we like to focus on weight load and time under tension or rep progression, this is not the only means of measuring progress. But for most who are new to training or new to training our way, there's little need to explore other means of overload, since it's unlikely they've adapted to the extent that their gains are the result of becoming more proficient. So during the 9 to 12 week range, again, during those 4 weeks, it's just still a focus on continuously evolving their program and trying to do what's best for them individually. But if we are working with somebody who is advanced, as I mentioned, we may move them along a little bit quicker, or if they want a little bit more variety, then we might utilize some of the training variables like those listed here. Things like the forced rep, extended sets, drop sets, all that kind of stuff. Beyond the initial 12 weeks of training, the focus becomes increasingly more about just managing training demands for long-term success and again, we use that IART education to further individualize the program and make real-time decisions about the direction of their training. Now, what I want to make mention of is that for us, and I'm not using this as a sales pitch for the IART, but for us, we're looking for congruency. So I know that the only way my trainers will know what to do with my clients, should they have to train them, or if I have to train one of theirs, is if we've all been educated within the same system, or we all are coming from the same mindset. We may do things slightly differently. As I said, it's a system, there's guidelines to follow, but I also realize that as personal trainers, we each have our own personality. We have our own style sometimes. But as long as we're following a general outline, those things don't make that much of a difference. It could affect how one trainer gets maybe slightly better results than another one. But if we're all focused on how we apply exercise based on, if we all have our own way of applying exercise, but we're working, again, with certain principles and guidelines in mind, eventually we're all going to get the same result for somebody. So that's why, for us, the education component is just so big, making sure that we all are on the same page. As you see, there's nothing dramatically special about this program. In fact, you might even think that it's way too simplistic. But it's that simplicity that makes it so effective and easy to transition into a more individualized program. And, it's all about getting accurate information about what the client's needs, abilities, and limitations are. So that's why having a system like this is so useful. I can't stress enough the importance of structure, guidelines, and systems, even when the primary aim is individualism. Especially if you have or plan to have other personal trainers working under you and you're looking to scale your business. Chances are you already follow a system, but many of you may not have taken the time to document it. Do it. And if you've already done it, revisit it. What can you change? What can be improved? How can you streamline it? I really hope that you got some value from this webinar, and I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to join me on it. I just want to remind you that I'll be hosting a 2-day workshop in September for a maximum of 20 people. It's going to be at Pure Physique's personal training studio. We're keeping this a pretty intimate event because we plan on doing a lot of hands-on work. As much as I love sitting and listening to a good speaker give me new or practical information, I personally love having the chance to put it all into practice, and I'm sure you do too, which is why we run this workshop the way we do. So if you want to join me, I'd love to have you there. I'm going to, go into some big, I'm not, as I mentioned before, I'm not going to go into some big sales pitch. Just go to the link you see here, and you can get more information. You can get a bunch of continuing education units if you're NSCA, NFPT, or ISSA certified personal trainers, but you don't need to be a trainer to attend. And there's still an early registration offer that's good until August, so you got a couple more weeks. Okay, if you have any questions on this stuff we talked about today, don't hesitate to shoot me an email. It may take me a few days to get back to you because I have a jam-packed schedule right now, but I will get back to you. Alright, well, thanks again, and I will talk to you soon.